happy. No? Yes?
Yes, we are. And you know, one of the most annoying things is when you're watching a video, you're streaming a series or a movie, you're just going through the internet and then the phone hangs and you're thinking it's a problem with your phone. No, it's not your phone. Sometimes the stream hangs because of low latency. But Safaricom has a very, very good solution to the buffering issues, to the lagging issues, especially if you are on 4G. So the better solution is making an upgrade to Safaricom 5G. That's the power move. Now, what do you need? You just need to get a router. And that router is very, very affordable. It costs 2,999 Kenya shillings. And the beauty about this is you can carry it anywhere. You know how you carry a speaker when you're going out with your friends, hanging out somewhere, and you want to listen to music? You can carry that router the same way and enjoy fast speeds, much faster speeds. Where can you get this? You can visit any Safaricom shop, masoko.com or Quickmart supermarket, or simply dial star 400 hash to just make that switch. Safaricom feels good to be home.
Absolutely. And oftentimes folks are saying, so where do I go? What do I do when you are met with a medical situation? Well, the Aga Khan University Hospital iko Eastlands. So if you're in that part of the city, usiende mbali kutafuta specialist, tuko kwa mtaa wako. The Aga Khan University Hospital has brought specialized care near you through our 53 outpatient medical centers. Watu wa Eastlands, we've got you with the following medical centers: Buruburu at the Kenya National Library Services Complex, Embakasi opposite the Kenya Pipeline staff quarters, Donholm at the Greenspan Mall, Komarok at K Mall, Ruai along Kangunda Road, Eastleigh through General Waruingi Road. Some of the specialists available at the Aga Khan University Hospital Clinic in your neighborhood include pediatricians, gynecologists, cardiologists, urologists, family physicians, neurologists, nutritionists, psychiatrists, ENT specialists, dentists, dermatologists, among others. Visit any Aga Khan University Hospital Medical Center in your hood today or call 0730 011 888. That's 0730 011 888. The Aga Khan University Hospital, world-class care here and now. And that's what we deal with, so you don't have to worry. Tuko wapi? Ntawako. All right. Are we getting into a conversation this morning? A senior human rights officer and advocate for the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights is Elijah Kandiero-Rotok. He's here with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being in the hot seat of the Situation Room. Hot seat to discuss hot issues. This is where we are. The tear gas has cleared. The clouds of mist of tear gas in the city of whatever color, pink, blue, clear, white, whatever it was last time, that has cleared. And now we are counting the numbers and we are counting the losses and we are seeing this is what the true situation looks like. Essentially, after the storm, and we're dealing with the aftermath. And the question, our calls for justice and accountability are now at fever pitch level. Those are the conversations that we're having with you this morning. So thank you for joining us to do that. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Dennis Aseto is going to welcome you with today's proverb. You're smiling, so you must have heard about that.
Yes.
We'd love to get your interpretation of the same.
Yeah, so the proverb today is from Kenya, beautiful country. But today, we're looking at several sectors. We looked at the part of agriculture sector, flowers. But now let's just look at the agriculture sector just as a whole, what this means to the country. And it contributes around a quarter to the GDP, that is 22.5% of the GDP. Now, however, it directly contributes to the economy through employment, indirectly through businesses, trading, and what there is. Now, directly, 20 to 22.5%. Indirectly, that is agro-linked, that is 27 to 33% spillovers, and combined contribution of between 35 to 50% to the GDP. So if you look at what agriculture means to the country, it is huge. Only that perhaps more investments need to go into it to make agriculture in the country be even better. One could only hope that these are things that the government duty bearers will be looking into. But off to our proverb today, which comes from the Luo community. And a hyena cannot smell its own stench. A hyena cannot smell its own stench. How would you interpret that?
It's interesting to look at that situation of the hyena and the something about body odor, that you can be within a situation and you think you're okay, yet to others you're stinking. So at times it can be interpreted to mean that you might be blinded or clouded from your judgment could be clouded from the things that you see, and you might also be in a position to not be aware that you're actually stinking. And so the issue of the hyena not understanding that, or not getting that it's actually stinking and it is used to its own body odor, then can also be seen as a way of to warn individuals, to tell them that at times you might think that you're doing the right thing and you are within your comfort zone, but to others you are actually stinking, or you are actually doing things that are inappropriate.
You know, individuals who've been pointing that stink is you. So I'm not saying how, but yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thanks for that interpretation. As we look at the conversations, like we said, so the gas has lifted. The stench in the city was of tear gas in different parts of the country, and that we could see the billows of smoke. And then after that is now when we're starting to count losses. Who would have thought that on a Wednesday, 2 days after, people are still succumbing to injuries? And again, yesterday we heard the news of other deaths of folks who succumbed to the injuries that they got, whether it came from the 25th of June or the 7th of July. And so counting those losses, we just wanted to first of all, of course, look at numbers, but at the same time then look at who's calling for justice and accountability. That usually things like this happen, the protests happen, there's violence, there's loss of life, and then we have to count it after that. But then who's making sure that where it was not if there's anything like an accidental death in a protest, that where there was, death by the bullet or things like this, who's going to make sure that justice is seen and heard? So maybe get an overview in terms of the numbers that we're looking at now, and then, what we do in terms of calls for justice.
Yes, thank you for that introduction. I would start by saying, of course, that our nation is grieving, and we are deeply saddened by the loss of life, the damage of property, and also the injuries that have been suffered by numerous Kenyans. From the perspective of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, we have documented to date 115 deaths spanning the last 1 year. But from the Sabasaba protests, we have documented 32. One actually had died yesterday. And we also have documented numerous injuries, over 107 injuries. We've also documented numerous arrests that are going to these, displaying the need for us to refocus our efforts towards accountability. Now, how this process is done is whenever we get complaints directly through phone calls or through individuals who are either through a distress call, an email, social media platforms, we immediately get in touch with these individuals that have sought, and for purposes of verification. So for every number, it has to be supported by not only a person at the scene, but also individuals who are close to that person. We also have visited various morgues to do also to observe the autopsies and postmortems that are being conducted for individuals who otherwise might have been categorized either as unknown or individuals who've been shot. And we've been documenting some of the major causes of death have been gunshot wounds, the use of blunt objects, and also we've noticed that the bodies are displaying instances of broken limbs. And so it shows that there's excessive use of force and firearms from our state agencies and also from the public who through either armed individuals, you can categorize them as goons, some have categorized them as militia, who've taken the law into their own hands and have meted out acts of violence towards other individuals and has caused this. And so from this number, the 32 that lost remains the highest since the demonstrations began last year. And it also is, as we reflect upon this, it calls upon the leaders to start thinking about what they actually said and the implications and the impact it has towards how protests are done in Kenya. I would cite that when leaders make statements, for instance, a shoot to kill, or for instance, a shoot to either maim an individual, then it actually limits or threatens this right to demonstrate, assemble, and picket. And so these acts should be called out because we have the National Police Service that is an independent institution. And under the command of the IG, they ought to have no directive apart from the IG. And so when you hear political leaders issuing out statements purporting to command the police or to issue directives to police, then it exposes the threat. And also when the misinterpretation happens on the part of the police officers, then they would be doing acts that are not only unlawful, but are also in breach of their own service standing orders. Because it is out of this, there's a connect between how the independence of the police is being interfered with by such utterances. And so when you see now that happening, and then you see the politicization of demonstrations within our country, it spells out that the right to demonstrate and picket is being interfered with to either suppress it or to use it for political gain at the expense of genuine Kenyans who have genuine grievances that need to be addressed. And some of the concerns that they are being voiced by the Kenyan people is that they need to see more accountability, justice, and good governance within our country.
Okay, so
yes.
Elijah, you're saying that. So let's look at these things in succession, shall we?
Yes.
That the protest took place, and by and large, if we look at the protests that took place in 2024, and let's just start with June 25th, that there were Kenyans in the street protesting. We didn't see a criminal element really, except for when we then saw Kenyans gunned down around Parliament and such. But this criminal looting that we are seeing, and stay with me here for a minute, the criminal looting and stuff that we're seeing didn't really happen on June 25th. As the protests, the subsequent protests took place, and they became more in terms of numbers, then we saw criminal elements introduced into this. I want to play again what the president said yesterday in just a minute, but look at what has happened. Based on what you're saying, there's independence of police. Nobody should be able to come in and tell the police what to do or what not to do. But these things are coming in between protests. We see a protest happening, this has happened. And then an announcement is made and it reaffirms what the police that you're talking about have actually done. And then another protest takes place. And then we have another politician in the name of the president coming and reaffirming what police do or have done. So then we are a bit confused, because then where do you draw the line? And can they, from a human rights perspective and also from a constitutional perspective, can these individuals actually give an independent body the orders that they're giving? I want you to hold on to that as we play this. Let's listen into what the president said yesterday for, avoidance of any doubt.
Anaenda kuchoma mali ya watu wengine. Mtu kama huyo apigwe risasi miguu, aende hospitali, akienda kotini. Yes. Yeah. Wasimuue, lakini wapige hii miguu ivunjike ndio aende kotini, aende hospitali, akienda kotini. Hapana. Hatuwezi kukubali mtu ambaye anaamuka kwake anaenda kuchoma mali ya mtu mwingine, biashara ya mtu mwingine. Iko haki hapo kweli? Hapana, hiyo mchezo watu waache. Kwa hivyo mimi nataka niseme askari wasipige wananchi risasi kuwaua. Lakini muhalifu, mtu ambaye amechukua kazi kwenda kuvunja biashara ya mtu mwingine, ashughulikiwe, aende hospitali, akienda kotini.
So he was clear in what he said, and it was no. He said police should not shoot Kenyans wantonly. So that part he was very clear about. So then one would wonder, so then will justice follow for all these Kenyans who have been shot? The number has gone to 31 just from the last couple of days. But on the other hand, he was clear, and he said those people who want to go and burn down the property of others or want to loot or destroy, they should actually be shot. They should not be killed, but they should at least be injured. Is he giving a directive, or is he stating his opinion?
Now, that statement could be interpreted from a human rights perspective as a political statement that might have implications in terms of the conduct of police officers, especially when they are managing protests and maintaining public and order management within our country. With this statement, it is important that such directives or such statements that are issued should have some form of sensitivity in the manner in which the police have conducted themselves. We are not hearing more about the people who've lost their lives. We are not hearing about the survivors who are now either suffered injuries or have lost property. These are the individuals that the state should have place more focus on, as opposed to the either purporting to issue either a directive in terms of how protests should be managed. I agree to the extent that no person should be shot, because the law provides for the National Police Service to maintain, preserve life and also property. And so the acts of preservation of life is important. The other element is that the use of lethal force, that includes gunshots, that includes the use of either the truncheons that are normally used by police. These could have impacts in terms of how an individual can suffer harm or violence from the acts of the police. And so in this past week, we saw clips of officers ordering individuals that we've been given orders to shoot you or kill you. And you wonder where this order is coming from. And it can be attributed to statements that are made by the political leaders, and in this case, the minister in charge of internal security. And so when the impact of such a statement is that it not only threatens, but it has a chilling effect to the population, in the sense that protesters or any person who has a voice to raise or genuine concerns would be limited, in the sense that they would feel that I will be afraid either to go to try and protest, or to the officer who is now maintaining law and order, is that this officer might now start becoming trigger happy and impact negatively the lives of Kenyans, either by the use of force or that especially the lethal force. And so such statements should actually be viewed as such, as that it merely points to the interference of the independent command of the Inspector General.
I mean, Elijah, you said the number of the death toll has increased to 32,
32,
right?
yes.
How many wounded again?
107.
107. Out of these 107, do you have a picture of the gunshot wounds, the type of gunshot wounds that these 107 have?
Now, for the injuries that that have been suffered either by bullets, they target the torso area, most of the
Upper torso.
the upper torso.
Yeah.
And so there are also those that have targeted the legs and also the arms. But there's some acts but even in such instances, the danger it poses to the health of these persons who are now suffering gunshot wounds is that it leads to great loss of blood and might immediately result to the loss of life for the individual. So the importance of us as a country being very categorical in terms of the use of firearms, it should be as a last resort where the threat of the individual officer or another human being is being used. So when such a statement is issued, then it should be looked at not only from the point of just a political statement or a personal opinion, because this is someone of the highest office within our country. And once they say such a thing, it bears a huge responsibility and also has an impact towards the entire country.
I mean, from your experience, Elijah, because the reason I was asking the type of wounds or bullet wounds, you talked about the torso area, legs and arms. This is already happening. So when the president said what he said yesterday, it's the assumption here is perhaps he's making this statement. It's the first time he's making this statement. But behind closed doors, maybe from what you're saying and the reading through all this, not so long ago, Murkomen, the interior CS, gave that order to the police.
Yes.
Then we saw on Monday a police officer saying,
Tuko na ruhusa.
tuko na ruhusa, tuko na amri ya
Yes.
kupiga risasi. Now, yesterday, the president actually said, shoot, not to kill, but shoot to injure as this person goes to hospital all the way to the courts. Now, quick question. Is shooting someone in the leg considered non-lethal? Because with the statement, it almost appears that if you're shooting somebody in the leg,
It's okay.
it's okay. Somebody will not die. It's non-lethal. Is this the assumption?
That should also be interpreted in this. From a rights perspective, we have documented numerous individuals who've suffered gunshot wounds to their legs. And it has caused not only permanent disability, but also to some that have led to the loss of life. And so such a directive should only be used at the last resort. That an officer, once deciding to aim at an individual and pull the trigger, should be at a point that it is so critical to not only that to save the life of another individual, but also or his life or the individual officer. So it is really very important for us to note that in saying that, you cannot just say that shooting someone at the leg would be considered as non-lethal, because it is at an extreme point. We should be asking ourselves, have these police officers used either communication first? Have they used force that is proportionate to the threat that is being faced? Because the directive is almost saying that anyone that tries to get to either a police station or any person who tries to loot, and the circumstances there, it depends on a case-by-case basis where the officer needs to apply the knowledge and training that they have received to now examine the situation that is at hand. But a general directive as such now places some sort of expectation or a threat that if you go to some places, you are going to be shot.
You see, Dennis, when you talk about how lethal it is when being shot in the leg, let me just go through it. One can actually die due to severing of arteries in the body, delayed medical help, which in a situation where it is a protest, that is the order of day, because it is a protest. You've been shot on the leg. How quickly can you get to a medical facility? So even the order that the president is giving, direct, when you're shot, there's a high possibility you'd die from bleeding. These are things that one should consider. But as we talk about HCR and you do investigations, you do recommendations to the government in terms of how to maintain human rights and all this. You've documented all this, but does it just remain at documentation? What follow-ups then do you do to ensure that it just stops being a document on the shelves gathering dust, but that the government, you're able to follow up with government to ensure that the recommendations you've given are actually implemented?
Thank you. First, our recourse has always been that we need the state to acknowledge the violations that have been meted out against.
Have they ever?
The acknowledgement comes by first institutions, independent institutions such as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, actually documenting and calling out that a certain number of individuals have suffered violation. After that, now the next call is for proper investigations into these violations. It can be done through, if it concerns the police, then the Independent Policing Oversight Authority takes the investigations. If it is by the public, then it is the National Police Service to conduct investigations and to see some form of justice. There are also other mechanisms where if we see a pattern that is systemic, for instance, then we collect evidence in our investigations to see whether they have met the threshold of human rights violations. And if it has, then we assist the victims and the families to now seek redress through the courts so that they see some justice. This includes victims of families that have lost their loved ones, victims of individuals who've survivors of either injuries, and also those who've lost their property. And so because ultimately our country has, or the state has an obligation to ensure that whenever these violations occur, there is some form of reparation mechanism, which includes restitution or even compensation, so that whenever violations happen, there must be, the state has the responsibility to ensure that these people are repaired in the sense that their concerns are heard, but also there is some form of satisfaction or memorialization for those either who've lost their lives. And in the past, that has been done. But
where has it been done? When have we seen a situation whereby the state has made reparations for a case like this, for example?
This has been realized through, one, the court process. But in the past, the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission was set up with a reparations framework, where this framework was to now look into all past historical injustices dating from 1963 up to 2008.
So it looked, that's my question. So we're going to go to a break, but I want to stick on this for just a little bit. That it looked into the issues, and that's where we have a problem. That you look into the issues, and we've seemed to be looking for a while, but even one, or two, one case whereby these reparations have happened. We look at post-election violence, for example. People are in court because the money in the billions that was supposed to be given to people for resettlement has never happened. We're looking at people whose bodies were floating on a river and then they've been found. Their families have never been compensated, never been explained to in terms of what happened. The people who died, there's no inquest, there's no there's no anything in terms of even finding. A mother sat in the chair where you're sitting today and her son was shot a year ago. I'm stuttering because I'm looking for the cases whereby we say the state then will take responsibility for some of these things. Maybe just one, even one.
Okay, in the past, the commission has assisted. I would mention two critical cases. One recent is the Baby Pendo case.
Still in court?
Yes, it's still in court, and the wheels of justice would take lengthy. It's a lengthy process because it started from an inquest. Now there's actually an international crimes case ongoing currently in Kenya, where police officers are now being put to account, stemming from the Baby Pendo case. Also, there are also other women who suffered sexual violence around that period, and they are now part of this case, and they are now looking into the acts of individual police officers that meted out these violations. We also supported a case stemming now from the 2007 case where individuals who were raped and also forcefully circumcised for cases of men went to demand that the obligations of the state to protect, that the state failed to protect them, and they were issued damages, but half of them though got damages, half did not, because they did not, because some did not report to the police. And there's an appeal ongoing, and a judgment would be issued, is actually on notice, and it has taken a long period for justice to be realized.
Okay.
And this is, and also points out to some of the teething challenges within our country in terms of accessing justice.
Okay, we'll take a break. And one would say that they're more than teething challenges, because at some point the tooth is going to cut through the gum, isn't it? And it's going to grow. And it's going to sound grotesque, but the truth of the matter is that a rape, especially in a situation of conflict, the people have done the research. It takes an average of 7 to 10 minutes for it to be done with. A bullet takes a second for it to pierce through somebody's skin and kill them. And here we are, taking cases in decades to even hear. Inquests take decades for that to be heard. And so one wonders, why doesn't justice move a little bit faster? We're talking this morning with Elijah Kandia-Rotok. He's a senior human rights officer and advocate with the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. We'll come back after this break and discuss a little bit more. And we'll also hear from former Deputy President Rigiji, and he says Kenyans are angry, and maybe these human rights need to move a little bit faster. We'll come back and discuss right after this. Don't go away.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
When I was still in government, officers were recruited from the administration police unit for special training by NIS on abductions, killings, and cover-up. They squad in Subarus, hooded and masked against court orders, are disguising themselves as DCI's officers, yet we know they are not.
So these are the things that he's saying that are happening, that he's alleging happening. And if that were to be the case from a human rights perspective, how then do you say, well, there's independence of the police, there's the rule of law and the Constitution, and then there's the reality on the ground, and then there is, of course, the executive and the orders that, come and go. How do you draw the line? How is there a fine line that you can see and cut through and say, this is what we should actually be doing?
Thank you very much for that question. From a human rights perspective, is that the operations of the National Police Service, especially during the managing peaceful protests and demonstrations within our country, should be within the confines of the law. Individuals who either are masquerading as police or who are in plain clothes, who come to act as though they are policing protests. There have been determinations from our court to say that police officers should wear their uniform and they should not conceal their faces. The reality is that we haven't seen this happening. And also the fact that there have been individuals who are either in plain clothes and also driving in vehicles that are either without plates or concealed, then it points out to the use of extra legal means to now suppress the right to demonstrate and picket. And in the instances and the cases that we've been able to document from certain areas where these individuals have gone into, is that we've seen the loss of life. And the intent here is to remove the accountability mechanism so that you can operate with wanton, with reckless abandon, and also not fit within the confines of the law. And because we are also within the network of human rights institutions in Africa. In fact, we host the network and also other global instances. We've seen this occurrence replicated in other countries. I would cite Egypt, I would cite Venezuela, Colombia, even China and Myanmar, where protests are targeted by individuals who are in plain clothes and concealed identities, but then they attack and even at times kill. And then the next move is a denial from state agencies that those either were not police officers or those were individuals who were not part of their team. Also, we've seen the emergence of goons within our protests, where there is now mass destruction of property, even attacking hospitals. And in such instances, again, it points out to the use of individuals who otherwise are operating unlawfully to achieve a certain aim. And this is where now we see a pattern of politicization by either side of the political divide, either ordering certain individuals to go participate in a demonstration with an intended aim, while to cause either mayhem, so that for the purposes of either suppressing or pointing out to your opponents. And in such instances, where there is low accountability and where there is either reluctance in terms of proper investigations, in terms of cooperating with independent bodies, then countries like Kenya can apply the international pressure. We would cite, for instance, statements from the international community.
They've done it. The
Yes.
Kenya National Human Rights, rather.
Yes. We also note that Kenya is a member of the Human Rights Council, where part of its functions is we have a universal periodic review where countries come and review one another, and they call out Kenya to take necessary steps
But Elijah,
to undertake this. These acts are patterns of also trying to enforce accountability and call for action to be taken against certain of individuals. Now, for the rule of law to be maintained, it is important for the Inspector General of Police to issue out directives for the investigation and arrest of these individuals.
This is the point, Elijah, and I'm sorry to interject. But these things are not happening. We understand their importance. In fact, it is created for, it is provided for in the law, but it doesn't happen. The UN Commissioner for Human Rights yesterday made a statement out of Geneva saying the same things that you said. But what happens beyond the statement, I think, is the question here. And we're wondering when, statements are made. It is not the first time that UNHCR has made a statement like that. It's not the first time where we've acknowledged that the IG of police has a responsibility to call out people that work on the service. We know this. But it seems as though we are paying lip service to something that, if we talk about it every now and then maybe somebody will do it, but it's not happening. And that's the place where we are in. That people are getting more frustrated by the day. We know what the law says, we don't do it. But then we see, and this is what may scare people, that the statements that then come from above is something so far removed from what their thought process would be. And the question is then, how do we deal with that?
Thank you. Our country should is in a position where we need to reflect and ask ourselves, are we going to be part and parcel of the other countries that have not taken any action for any violation of human rights? That is one. In instances where there is now low accountability, police reforms, trainings, also the strengthening of independent bodies such as the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, the HR arm or the independent oversight body, that is a National Police Service Commission that looks into the disciplinary measures of certain acts of officers, and even the internal affairs unit need to come in and look into this. Now, we've had various task forces where the commission has also participated in that called for various reforms. We would date back even to the Ransley report that called for the establishment of the IPOA, for instance, and even recently the Maraga led task force. And this, one of the concerns, of course, was that politicization of the National Police Service, incidences of impunity, and also corruption. And we are still grappling with the implementation of the recommendations of these task forces. And in certain instances, it is time for individuals to come and ask for their rights through the court process, because one of the institutions that have proven as a strong protector of human rights has been recourse through the court process. And we've assisted Kenyans to go and seek redress through this process. And even when there are directives, for instance, that might either limit the provisions of certain rights, then groups have gone to say that no, certain provisions of our law needs to be maintained, especially the laws around the management of protests, especially regarding, for instance, the barricading and limiting spaces, the zoning of certain places, and also the concealment of officers, and so on. And so such determinations have assisted to safeguard this right.
Do you feel that there's a direct circumventing of the law? I'm going to push on this a little bit.
Yes.
When was baby Pendo killed, Okari?
2017.
This is now 2025. Yeah. It's 8 years down the line. The thing is still in court. We're still pussyfooting around whether we're going to have the court hearings in Kisumu.
Actually, the latest is there was a conversation that is awaiting a decision to move this to Kisumu.
Do you see? We're still discussing whether we are going to have the trials in Kisumu.
8 years later.
8 years later. We're going to have a conversation about whether we should have the conversation in another city. And in that period, we have uncountable people who have died at the hands of would-be the justice system. So the question remains, are we really serious when it comes to these things? Or does it sound nice that we can say, oh, well, you know, the wheels of justice will turn, that the justice system is making sure that everybody can have an opportunity? It's not. And we should be able to say the truth.
Yeah.
It is not. So Ibrahim's mother, who's there, and it's been a year since her son died, was killed. Albert Ojwang was buried last weekend. Karaoke was buried this week. These folks are wondering, oh my God, if this thing is going to go through the court, or if it's going to go through a human rights system, when are we ever going to get justice?
I mean, even Ndu, you look at Brian's mom yesterday, had to stay with the body for 14 hours.
And
simply because you go to hospital, we cannot accept this body because there is no police report. You go to police, they tell you, we are tired today. Come back when we arrested so that we can take this statement. And there is even a question that has been asked here by one Mkwana. It seems as though the police in this system behave as if they are a protected lot.
And they also glory in the fact that we can count on reports. We can say, oh, there's been a report. There's been data collected. Oh, we've had a conversation. Somebody's made a statement. I'm frustrated. And I think a lot of people are frustrated as well, because when it go beyond the reporting and the task forces and the reports that they give, people have died.
And you know, to even push it further, families are now alleging that there's foul play because postmortems are delayed.
Yes.
I'll give an example. So the reference to the June 25th demonstrations, bodies of young men bearing gunshot wounds are later found in the mortuaries with exit wounds during autopsies. Now, what the families are asking for is, can we get these reports as soon as possible? Now, the families arrive at these places early in the morning. No one is there to help them. IPOA is blaming the police, and the police is blaming the pathologist. If the government is then blaming it's blaming itself, who should the citizens run to? because we seem to, we talk about the reluctance, like you said, reluctance of proper investigations and avoiding accountability. And on this other end, conversations of dialogue, forming task forces, doing reports, we are counting numbers every day. Where do then citizens turn to when the government is again saying, it's you to blame, it's this other person to blame, but they're still within the same system?
Yes, it's interesting that I actually resonate with your comments, because you're literally describing the life of an officer or a human rights defender at the commission or even at the civil society spaces. These are real challenges that we meet daily, and we are left with the burdens of the victims and their families. They are looking towards institutions such as ourselves, IPOA, institutions such as the National Police Service, to act and to see justice realized. The extent to which the commission can go, especially for instances of loss of life, for the wanton destruction of property that occurred in certain instances, is that the law enables us to document and also have a working relation with institutions such as the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. I'll cite an example. If there is the loss of life today or grave injury, we would do an investigation in terms of the human rights impact. Then forward the same to the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, who we work collaboratively to ensure that action is done. Now, there's again challenges in terms of that relation to try and secure their accountability, because where there is non-cooperation, it becomes difficult to prove a case against an individual officer or against an act that has been done where there is insufficient evidence. And this also is replete of our history. I remember from the past, it has been noted that issues around evidence collection has limited the issues around access to justice. And so for institutions that are ourselves, we will continue to monitor, we will continue to document human rights violations, and we are calling upon Kenyans to come and report. The beauty about this is that with documentation, where there's violations, there's no limit as to the timeline and period where individuals can be held to account. Yes.
Our time runs out, but thank you for joining us. If anything, it's very clear that we can't stop discussing these things. And we want to thank you for joining us this morning. Elijah Kandia-Rotok is a senior human rights officer and advocate at the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights. That's been our conversation this morning. It's 8:02.
Thank you.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
That melody.